Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Fuente and Meerapfel present Meet the Professor. Hello, world.
Hello, Jeremiah.
Hello, everyone. So today we're going to talk a little bit about sizes, a little bit about wrappers, but we're going to talk more about sizes because if you go and you've been smoking for a while or you're a newcomer, you will be amazed how much the size in our industry has really evolved. Some people have not gone into the trend. Other people have kept themselves very traditional. In the States, it's one thing, and Europe's another thing, Asia, the other thing. But I think it's an interesting topic. And what are your thoughts on that, my co-host?
Well, I think that size matters, right?
Absolutely. Size always matters for sure.
So, well, tell us a bit more about the size, Professor.
Well, if you go back to the 60s and the 70s, people will be smoking a lot of petite Coronas. There's a size that in the 70s and the 80s was very popular. And today, you hardly can give it away, which is a Longsdale, 6.5 by 44. That, by the way, is one of my favorite sizes, with also the Corona Gorda. But if you look more or less, let's say, late 90s, the first person that really came out and started with those big cigars was our good friend Ernesto Perez Carillo, when he came out with La Gloria Cubana, with a 54, with a 56, there was a 58, then came a 60. Then Ernesto, when he sold his company, he started doing the inch. It was an inch 60, it was a 62, a 64, a 70. And that's where the trend started. And of course, a lot of companies started to make these cigars with big ring gauges. And we even have a company that does an 8 by 80, which it's not my cup of tea, but at the end of the day, we all want people to smoke cigars and to enjoy themselves. If you take, for example, Europe, I think Europe, even though it has gone a little bit more into the 54s, some countries are bringing in the 60s, but it's totally different. I think the Europeans, right now, still the best-selling size is the Robusto. And of course, you'll see some 52s, some 54s, some countries you'll even see some big ring gauges. But my personal opinion and experience is I think the Europeans are more conservative towards the traditional sizes, petite Coronas.
Do you really believe
5.25 by?
You really believe that?
That's actually funny.
You think the Europeans are more conservative and traditional in their way of smoking and dressing? You really believe that?
Oh my God.
But of course.
And
That's
I cannot agree with you more. I think that the Europeans, and actually the Middle East and Asia is the same, but it's very, very old school. We have a very difficult time separating ourselves from tradition. Very difficult time adventuring ourselves into unknown grounds and territory. Things take a lot longer. I mean, I remember 20 years ago, 30 years ago, developing non-Cuban cigars in Europe. And the time it took for people to be able to experience and understand and realize the value of what these Cuban families were accomplishing in the Dominican Republic and Nicaragua was mind-boggling. It took a long time. The United States of America in the 90s, things took off, bang, boom. And all of a sudden, the biggest market on the planet, 70% of world consumption, even more possibly, was being consumed on U.S. territory with these, what people called back then, New World cigars. However, in Europe, it took well into the 2010s, 2015s. It's only recently that people truly understand and truly understood the value of what was happening. And I think similar thing happened in the wine industry. You take the French wines and the way that the Italians and the Spaniards and the Californians and what have you, the Australians and the South Africans, the amount of time they took to be able to establish themselves on the international markets. I mean, 20 years ago, nobody would touch a South African wine in France or in Belgium or in Italy. And today in Belgium, which is the largest consumer of Saint-Emilion per capita on the planet, there's South African wines on people's tables. There's Italian wines. There's Spanish wines that are greater, much greater than some of the greatest French wines that were ever produced. And so
Marketing. It's got to be marketing.
This is testimony to how stubborn we are, to how traditionalist we are. And yes, those small sizes reflect that. The Robusto was a big cigar when I was a kid. My father, my grandfather, they were smoking Petit Coronas. They were smoking, a Robusto was a big cigar.
That's interesting.
It's true. And the thing about, if we go to Europe, like I said before, still Robusto dominates. Now look how the industry, let's just take the boom days. Robusto was the #1 selling, and it kept on going and going and going and going. The boom ended. We started again from 2000 to 2010. Still Robusto was still the #1 size. But in the last 4 years, the size that sells the most in the United States is a Toro 6x54.
Amazing.
And very, very, still Robusto is in second place, but very close, like in a horse race, trying to catch up with him, is a 6x60. So, a lot of people, and I'm not going to deny it, whether I'm at the IPCPR or at the TAA, or just when I go and, a lot of people approach me, say, well, I want to come out with a cigar. I'm going to do this. Could you smoke? Could you do that? And I see people trying to come out with all these different sizes. Those days where you used to have brands that I don't want to mention that had 11, 12, 13 SKUs that you would go into a shop and it would start off with a little Rothschild, then a Petit Corona, then a Corona, then a Robusto, a short Robusto. They would have 13 across. Those days are over. Practically now, it's a Robusto, a Toro, a 6x60, depending which is the brand, maybe a Corona and maybe a Bellicoso.
Jose, you think those days are over? You really believe that? Because I'm a little soft heart and a romantic. I always go back to my first love. I mean, look at you. You finally went to the hairdresser. You went back to your beautiful self. I think that at the end of the day, people adventure themselves. They go out there, they do all kinds of stuff, they experience, they have a great time. But can you ever forget your first love?
Never. But what I mean is, right now, if you're going to come out with a line, you don't need more than a Robusto, a Toro, a 6x60, maybe a Corona, and a Bellicoso. Because listen to this, Bellicoso 6.25x52 is not a big seller. But if you go by the magazines, always that Bellicoso, I don't know what it is, because it might smoke, in my personal opinion, because the way the cigar is shaped, smokes a little bit different, always gets those #1, #2, #3 ratings on the majority of the top magazines. And of course, we know that, with Cigar Aficionado, they dictate what's going to be the rest of the year for a company. When you get that #1, #2, or #3 spots, you know that you're not going to be able to produce enough cigars, because right when that rating comes out, it's just like crazy. I'll give you an example. How was it for you with the Eye of the Shark? I guess people were driving you crazy.
Yeah, no, unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Apart from being an incredible cigar, when that cigar hit #1, I mean, listen, even before it hit number one, I don't think we could, we could supply anywhere near
I
enough.
know.
But when it hit number one, it just went berserk from there on. And yeah, but you know what? We're having that with most of the Fuente cigars, rating or no rating.
Oh, no,
Right.
that's true. I
That is
mean,
the truth.
it's crazy. I mean, Opus, I mean, and now that I've been with the company, even though I knew all about all these Opus, and I'm seeing all these guys posting all these cigars and all things, I said, like, God, I never heard about this one. I never saw this one. And even though I've gone to some shops and people, give you the cigar, now I'm trying to really try to catch up. And then people are asking me about all this stuff. And I say, look, I got to be honest. I've seen it. I might have smoked it, might have not smoked it, but it's impossible because every year that the company has come out with something that's been so very unique. It's how would you say? It's like the it's like the factory, the candy factory, or that great chef, always cooking up something. So Carlito's always working on something. And if you smoke these special editions one to another, they're totally different, in my opinion.
Definitely. Not only that, but like I wasn't even a huge cigar smoker, and one of the things that totally drew me to smoking more cigars and actually enjoying them and appreciating them was the Fuente brand. Like there's just something about it. It just doesn't taste like a cigar or a smoke.
It tastes what a cigar is supposed to taste like, Melanie.
Yeah, there you go. That's what it is.
You made an interesting point, Professor, earlier on. You mentioned that that these ratings sometimes out of nowhere are rating sizes which people typically don't buy. That's curious. Do you know why?
No, to be honest, if I don't want to mention brands, but I've known some of the brands that have been very highly rated. Is that figurado shape, that bellicoso shape also? I think it's the way the smoke flows into it, and I can't explain it because we've done experiments like having a Robusto and then just making that same cigar in the bellicoso shape. And even though it's the same filler, binder, and wrapper in the bellicoso size, it smokes totally different. I don't know if you, with some of the brands of our brands, have picked up that perception that maybe you like this size more than another.
I'm a big Robusto guy. A Robusto and down. I'm not a big Robusto and up. I'm a big Robusto and down. I love the 38s, the 36s, the 42s, the 48s, the 50s. I mean, those are the size I love. And to be honest with you, the pyramid's shape on the head is not the cigar I dive for. I don't know why. Maybe it's because the cut is a little bit smaller because I cut it a little bit smaller. Maybe I should go a little bit further down. But I like having the entire cap cut off the end of my cigar. But that's personal preference.
Well,
So
you're much
how
more.
are you with box press? How are you with the box press?
That's an interesting question. I chew my cigars. So
okay, Alphonse.
Yeah, exactly. I chew my cigars. My father chewed his cigars. I guess I do it because I saw him chew on his cigars his whole life. He used to put the cigar in his mouth and he just started chewing and chewing and chewing. And yeah. And then I guess similar to Alphonse, I don't know, because I never saw my grandfather do that, but who knows? And maybe I replicated it. I don't know why. Probably because he was my God and I wanted to, look up to him and I wanted him to be proud and see me doing the same things as he was doing. But when you do that, it doesn't matter so much if it's box pressed or not anymore. You're going to have a chewed end of a cigar left in your mouth, right?
That's so funny, actually.
I'm still laughing. Wasn't it Don Alberto that said that he was with somebody or Alphonse was smoking a cigar? He wanted to give it to somebody after he chewed it off and said, like, puff on it to see what it was.
Listen, I was laughing my head off, but I also didn't say anything because my dad used to do the same thing. And I did the same thing. And my father used to chew in a cigar and be like, "Hey, son, taste this." And I'd be like, "Oh, fuck." And I put it in my mouth and start smoking it. And it was my father. It was okay. I didn't, it didn't matter. But then I started doing the same. And, people in the office and colleagues, I'd be like, "Taste this." But I forgot that I'd been chewing on the cigar for like 3 hours.
Oh my God.
And it's funny because now, I mean, we're not going to do it now. And I mean, maybe for a long time. But, we're at the factories, we're smoking a cigar. What we will do is like this. And if it's a little bit chew, what we'll take out is our cutter and cut off and smoke it. Because sometimes we're trying to get feedback, maybe on a wrapper that we're working with or a filler. We're smoking a pure grade, we're interacting to see what's going on. So in our industry, it's a very a common thing to do. And I remember that one time we had some people visiting from the States, and Manuel, me, and a couple other guys were exchanging, and they were like, their eyes were like, I said, no, it's no bad habits. Don't worry. It's something very common that we do in our industry. Another thing is, if you go like, and I've been in Asia, I mean, I've been in Thailand, I've been in Hong Kong a couple of times, Shanghai, doing events and things like that. I think that in like in China and those countries, people also, at least I haven't been there in years, I saw a lot of people smoking, a lot of Corona 5¼ by 42, a lot of Robustos. I didn't see at that time so many big cigars. That I think the people in the Middle East, they're more traditional too. You have more experience with them than I do, Jeremiah. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, before I answer your question, I want to read a post that Cynthia just put on. She says, "Jose, you look handsome."
He does.
And I agree with Cynthia. Your haircut is
nice.
I agree. Listen, Jose.
Well, after 3 months, I gotta look better. Emma says I look 10 years younger.
Yeah, I told you 20. You see? No, I agree. And
I gotta get my man cut. He's got to have the whole the forest cut down.
But then Cynthia says that we never forget our first love. She says, "You always go back home." She enjoys, she says, "I enjoy all sizes, but my favorite is the Don Carlos No. 3. And I know that for a fact because Cynthia always smokes, not always, but a lot, that Don Carlos No. 3. I know that it's a very important cigar for her. And I understand it because that's one of my all-time favorites. She enjoys the 42, 44 ring gauge. She loves the Petit Corona. But she says she can smoke an Eye of the Shark as well. And it's all about the mood. And then she talks about the Lancero. And that, Jose, is absolutely true. I think Cynthia hit the nail on the head. Cigar size is also about mood.
No, I agree. I've always said it in my seminars that one of the most important things is what we call the state of mind. If it's hot, if it's cold, the company you're with, that affects. And Cynthia mentioned Lanceros. Let me tell you something. That is a cigar, in my personal opinion, that's a true connoisseur cigars. I've seen people that I trust their palates, that are cigar geeks, smoking in a lounge, in a shop, a Lancero. And people say, "Why are you smoking that girly cigar?" and try to make fun of it. And the thing about the Lanceros, it's not only a connoisseur cigar, it's a cigar that you really have to know how to smoke it. It's a cigar that you have to smoke it very, very slow to really enjoy it. And to be honest, if you're a fan, let's say, of Cameroon, and I did a lot of projects in my old company with Lanceros Cameroon, that I gotta tell you something. When you're smoking a Lancero with a wrapper that you really enjoy, it's like being in heaven, because you're getting that sweetness, that spice, that earthiness, whatever the characteristics of that cigar is, and you know, we've always heard Carlito talking about how difficult it is. And when people ask me all over the world, what's the hardest cigar to make? Is it a Diadema Fino? Is it a Salomon? Is it a Belicoso? And I tell them, it's the Lancero. They say, but why? It's that little thin cigar. Because to put those 5, 6 different leaves, it could be half a leaf of this, a quarter of a leaf of that, to put into that cigar, to get a perfect draw on that, in my opinion, it's one of the hardest things to accomplish. And in the majority of factories, they always take the most upskill rollers to roll that cigar.
Yeah, I love the Lancero. I think it's an awesome cigar. And we
Oh,
have
look who
El
showed up.
Papo del Humo on the air with us. Papo!
Hey, who's our new guest? I see some good-looking guy, man. Que lindo te ve, profe. Hey.
I know. 3 months without taking a haircut. Your sister just sent me some compliments. Jeremiah says I look 20 years younger. Emma says 10. Jasper looked at me like, uh-oh.
I noticed.
You look great, Papa. You look great. God bless, man.
Well,
Good to
yeah,
see
I
you.
need.
Hi, Melanie. How are you, sweetie?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. Good. Very good. Very good.
Carlito, we've been talking about the evolution of sizes and how the difference is between the Europeans that are more conservative and how we went to, in the States, the 70s and the 80s, and you and me have talked about it, Longsdale, 6.5 by 44. And right now, if you look at all the brands out there, very few brands do well with the Longsdale. I'm a big fan of it. Everybody knows I love a Corona Gorda. So when you guys were making cigars, you and your father back in the 70s, could you tell us a little bit about what were the 2 best-selling sizes you guys had at that time? 70s to 80s, or let's take it 70 to 90.
Well, let's go. Let's start with the 70s that I definitely recall. Most popular sizes were 5.5 by 42 to 44, 43 to 6.25 by 44. You know, basically, you know, maybe 6.5 by 42. But it's basically those sizes. A 7-inch cigar was considered a long cigar. And usually the biggest cigars that, you know, we're talking about the average, the majority. I think would have been a 7 by 48 or 7 by 46. That was already considered a pretty big cigar. Of course, you know, there was a few sold that were short and thicker and probably longer and thicker, you know, but those were the rare ones. Those were the, you know, all those put together, all those sizes were considered the rare sizes, and they fell at maybe 10% of the total volume. Now, you know, I don't have the figures and I didn't do any research. It's just from my memory. Then towards when the time came in Central America in the 70s, when we went to Nicaragua, things changed. When Tampa, who had traditionally been the industry, and those were the sizes, Nicaragua started making cigars that were longer and thicker by hand, and in the 70s, and we started making 7 by 49, 8.5 by 52, and 8.5 by 52, which we called the Cañones. That was the biggest cigar in the market. There wasn't anything that big that I remember. I don't even recall any 54s during that time. And then, you know, you started with what we call the Rothschild back then, which is a Robusto today, usually 4.5 by 50. Today, Robustos are 50 by 52, you know. But basically, I think the bigger sizes started becoming popular in the late 70s to the early 80s, but not until, I guess, the mid 80s that we already saying, yeah, mid 80s, 1983, 84, that those sizes really started growing, being popular. But it wasn't into the 90s that we started getting all these to the late 90s or the year 2000, because I think in the late 90s still the sizes were pretty classics. We had double Coronas and everything, but they were pretty classics. I don't recall the time when people started. I think it's going into the year 2000 then that people started with the 60s. It became so popular. And then people started with thicker cigars, bigger cigars. But usually I would say in the 90s, they were the mid 90s. It was the classic sizes that we know, that the classics from double Corona down, double Corona, Corona Gorda, Robusto, maybe a Lonsdale, but which it was not as popular at that time. It started diminishing as far as popularity, but those were the sizes, Toros and things like that. And then, after the year, in the 2010s and everything, it's when the boom or the big popularity of big, heavy, thick cigars, which we've talked about many times. We talked about many times in the show about my feelings about, as a tobacco farmer and as a retail, if it's about we're a retailer and so forth, how, it's concerning for the industry with the disproportionate amount of tobacco that's needed of what the amount that's actually produced in an acre of tobacco to be able to produce those cigars, that it drains the industry. There's not, I think that unless there's a certain balance of what is available and everything, it's not good for anybody. Today you see like there's, but you see people, things go in cycles, it swings, history. I see people wanting Lanceros, people wanting Lonsdales, thinner cigars, elegant cigars. I hear, I learn from consumers many times because, things I didn't think of. And I know years and years ago, I heard why they like them and the flavor profile and everything. And they talk about the ratio of wrapper to filler and things like this. We have a lot of smart people out there in the audience. And, not that they're mathematicians, they're scientists. But thin cigars are comfortable. Listen, I've always said, if I'm gonna get stretch marks on my lips, I know what I want that stretch mark to be on. I know why. If I'm gonna stretch those lips, I don't want it to be on a 70 ring gauge cigar or a 66 ring gauge cigar. I know exactly, now, hey, no, look at Melanie, she's laughing. Maybe I'm like, like Johnny Carson at my age, sitting behind my desk and interviewing Dolly Parton and say, I would give a year's salary to see what's under there. So, but anyway, I've said it before, if I'm gonna get stretch marks, I want it to be on something else and not on a 65 ring, 64 ring or something like that. But that's me personally. And that's what this show is about. It's about being yourself. It's not about selling cigars. It's about having fun and,
And it's about stretch marks.
Pardon?
And it's about stretch marks.
Why not, man?
You're absolutely right.
I've always said that cigars are medicinal, so
yeah.
Why not?
Well, listen, I want to hear Melanie's point of view on this.
No,
not as far as the stretch marks, as far as thin cigars and everything.
Of course. What were you thinking of?
I was thinking of Audrey Hepburn and her nice, long, sexy cigars.
So what's your favorite size of cigars, Melanie?
I do love a Lancero. I do, and I haven't had very many Fuente Lanceros, but I have definitely had some Lanceros that are delicious, and I think that they're sexy. They look good on women. They have a lot of flavor. They're easy to smoke. Like even this cigar is, it's not quite a Lancero, but it's like classic. I think it's the signature Hemingway, and I love the size. I think it's fun.
It's a great size.
I just want to add something when you talk about sizes and Melanie being a beautiful female, or not because of her beauty, but I remember being being at a big conference a long time ago in Las Vegas with this was in the early 2000 or maybe year 2000, in the middle of the boom or towards the end of the boom. It had to be the boom. And we talked about, you know, celebrities and friends and everything. Jose Blanco and Bellucci was there, and you know, he came in as moderator, and you know, he was funny as crap. I mean, this guy was amazing. And I remember George, what's the name with the tan? George loves Dominican cigars.
Hamilton.
Hamilton, good-looking guy, yes, really down-to-earth, really sweet guy. He's sitting next to me in the panel and everything. And you had, I'm not going to name the names. They've been mentioned on the show, but I'm talking about the CEOs, the who's who of the cigar industry, of the big corporations. And this is the middle of the boom, and there's a big audience out there. And it came to the question and answer section after we made our presentations or whatever it was. And someone asked, does anybody make a cigar for a lady? And I remember the big companies coming out, their CEOs saying, oh no, we're working on something now, very thin and long, and it's going to be so mild and this and that and all that, blah, blah, blah. Then the next person, you know, wanted to please the audience, you know, entertain the audience and their company and stand up for their position, basically said the same thing. You know, we have a very thin cigar, sexy, very thin, this and that for ladies that will be coming out shortly and everything. I know everybody spoke, and I didn't say a word because I didn't want to get into that. And just like always, I get into trouble without intending to. Somebody says, Mr. Fuente, you're quiet. We don't hear your opinion. And I said, every cigar we make is made for a woman. It is the woman who inspired me. It is the female who inspires me. It's the love of my grandmothers, my mothers, all the stuff, the women, every cigar. We don't make cigars for men, or we don't make cigars for women. We make cigars to enjoy. And a woman, there's nothing to me sexier than a woman with a Robusto or a Toro. And I mentioned that, and I says, a woman has, you can't expect a woman only to enjoy ginger ale. She has every right to enjoy a brandy, a cognac, or caviar. And she has the same taste buds as men. And I mentioned that my mother from a distance knew when it was a Fuente cigar or not a Fuente cigar by the aroma. Women have something special that not many men have. And that is that sense. It's like another sense, you know? They smell it coming. They could tell when the approach from that good-looking gentleman walking up, if it's well-intentioned or not. They got this extra, you know, sense. And when a woman enjoys a cigar, I think they do it because they love it, and they have an appreciation for the finer taste, for the finer aromas in life. They have that extra sense. So I believe all our cigars are made for a woman. All of them. They're not made for men. They're made for people who love good taste. And for me to go out and say, I'm going to make a thin cigar because that's for a woman, that would be contradictory to my beliefs and everything that we've worked so hard for in our family for generations.
Well, I'm going to totally agree with you because you're the reason why I'm smoking cigars. Sorry, but that's true. I pretty much started.
Well, I just hope to continue to do everything humanly possible, never to disappoint you or any other human being who believes in us and follows us and enjoys our products, because I enjoy them alongside with you. And if I get a cigar that I find something just a little bit, maybe most people won't notice, it drives me crazy. I don't sleep. I go into the factory and find out why. I call all our supervisors. I make a big fuss out of it. I want to turn things inside out because I know I can't see it all. It's impossible when you have a big factory and it's made by human beings, and humans do error. It's not intentional, but you do. But we try to motivate everybody because we know the responsibility and the obligation that we had to deliver the best products humanly possible. And Melanie, when you say things like that, I mean, that's what we strive for. That's what we pain for. And that's our passion. What we love is just to bring a smile and make people happy. So thank you very much. I appreciate your compliments.
Absolutely. And, thank you very much for creating such a nice cigar. And I love to send my girlfriends these cigars. I'm like, okay, if you don't, you're not sure about cigars, just try these. Like, I usually send them the short stories, and they love them. And then they fall in love.
Yeah, they love the short stories. My sister Cynthia, with Between the Lines, with the two wrappers, it's rich, but yet it's creamy. and smooth and just has all the taste that you're looking for. It's a comfortable size, but it's a cigar. I mean, it's not because of the size. It's a real cigar. But I've said in other shows, and people who are watching for the first time, I just want to say, you know, if there's anything that it would, in my lifetime, that, you know, the years or days that I have left, hopefully a decade or more, there's nothing that I would want more than to see more women enjoying cigars, accompanying their, you know, their companions, their boyfriends, or their friends. They don't have to be boyfriends. It doesn't have to be a relationship, but just accompany people. I'd rather smoke with a lady than with a man, and maybe there's something wrong with that. But you know, I just enjoy it, and I look at it with respect. And I think one of the most important things, significantly, that I think that is brought a satisfaction, a pleasure, and optimism with me in the last 10 years is how many friends I have on Facebook, ladies, how many ladies run smoke shops.
Yeah.
And I see them, you know, they run the smoke shops. They got the cigar lounges. I mean, many of my friends, I wish I had, Melanie, you have to help me how you could start another page and do something, because I got 5,000, and you know, there's so many people out there from all over the world, from Europe, from all over, ladies, and they enjoy cigars. And maybe ladies still in different countries because of the culture and so forth. I know, because they personally have confided in me that they enjoy cigars, but they don't do it still. But you know, that's the good thing about it.
Carlito, I'm a little bit jealous of you. You literally wake up with like this desire to create something, and then obviously meet people, create something that will bring people together. And I just think that's amazing. Like, it's got to be awesome to wake up to that every morning, right?
Thank you. No, thank you very much. You know, it's not into the last years that I really realized that. It wasn't until, I say last year, maybe last 20 years, because like everyone in the cigar industry, I think everybody was just fighting very hard to survive decades ago, and to do the right thing and to build their business and so forth. I look at things differently now, as I've had the opportunity over the last 20 years to visit around the world, to visit people, to meet so many people. I realize that that is something that I have been blessed to be born in this era, to be able, like my colleagues who are around, to be able to experience that. My grandfather didn't experience that. You have to remember back 80, 70, 60, 50, 40 years ago, consumers didn't know who the manufacturers were. They knew the brands, but there was no contact or communication, or, you know, there was no exchange. Not like today that we do events, and I'm looking forward to the day we do again. We get to meet people. They're my friends. I give them a hug. You know, people didn't get to meet my grandfather and give him a hug. Only the people that were close to him. But everything was like in the community. Today, everything is around the world. There's no boundaries. And you have friends. I have friends from all, you know, I don't even like to use the word, but it's from different religions, different race, different ways, you know, different political backgrounds. And, you know, they like different teams than I do, you know, but the thing is, when we have a cigar, it melts all boundaries and it brings us together. And that's what I love the most about cigars. And not because we make them, but when I'm enjoying them and I'm on the market. And you're absolutely right, Melanie. And keep sending cigars to your friends and everything, because every time one learns to appreciate the painstaking effort that it takes, and the years of sacrifice to be able to produce one enjoyable cigar, that appreciation, it motivates me, keeps me going, and hopefully keeps my heart pumping young.
Yeah, but you're not giving them just a cigar. You're giving them a moment. You're giving them a memorable time. You're producing a meditation for these people. So it's amazing. It's awesome. I just love it. I love it all.
But thank you so much. Thank you. And we love that you love it. Absolutely.
Carlito, the other thing we were talking about is how different the consumers in the States are compared to Europeans. Europeans are more traditional, still, and I did a survey the other day that Jeremiah and I talked about still how Robusto is the #1 size still in Europe. And right now, in the last 4 years, the #1 selling size in the States is a Toro, a 6x54. Then very close between a Robusto 5x50 and a 6x60. But still in Europe, people are really into Petit Coronas, Corona 5¼ x 42, the traditional Robusto. In some countries, you've seen the evolution of some bigger sizes, but in Europe, it's totally different from the United States.
No, I don't have that experience that you do or Jeremiah. I do see a gravitation to bigger sizes in Europe, which didn't exist before, but now with communications and people see and traveling, they see what's popular in other areas, they try them. And, you know, most people, especially the ones that have been enjoying cigars for many, many years, it's hard to change. You know, it's like changing your cologne. I mean, I'm one that I've been wearing the same cologne for 25 years and everything. And I don't even smell it anymore. And if I change it, then, you know, I feel like everybody else smells it. They know when I walk in the factory. I don't know if that's good or bad because, you know, I don't know if that gives up, hey, you know, the man is here. You got to be careful, you know, do things right. But I don't even smell it anymore. But some people, you know, you don't like to really change as far as sizes and things like that. But I do see a gravitation in Europe. But I'd like to ask Jeremiah something. In the Middle East also. Middle East, they like big ring gauges cigars. I don't think too big because it's a little awkward because no one has time to enjoy a long cigar. And if you do, you're gifted. You have a special gift and you're privileged if you have the time. Because if I had the time and we had time, I'll be smoking big cigar. Right now I'm smoking a 7-inch Churchill. But Oro Escudo. But this is fresh. This is off the rolling table. So but anyway, I see a gravitation of bigger cigars here. But I'd like to ask Jeremiah something. If the reason for this is not that, unlike the United States to a certain degree, Europe has a lot of regulations and taxes based on weight. And I don't know if that's the reason that it is. I don't know if that affects it because the big cigars are heavier, and I don't know if there's different taxation. I'm not sure with that because that's something that is handled in Europe with the importers and distributors and so forth. But if that's a factor why more big cigars are not enjoyed. Jeremiah, you have an opinion?
Yeah, I do. I think you're right. In certain countries, weight does play a role on taxation. But those countries today are very limited. The only countries where it really makes a huge difference are going to be countries like the United Kingdom, because they have an extremely high taxation.
Correct.
And therefore, the actual opposite happens. People want more for their money, so they're going to take a bigger cigar, and the cigar is going to be more expensive. So they rather have a cigar which is, you see quite big cigars, ironically, being sold in Great Britain, cigars with more weight to them. They think they get bigger value for money. So you're right. But in general, most countries don't have a weight ratio on excise and taxation in Europe. I think that what you mentioned in the Middle East is at the crossroad between two worlds. It sits between Europe and the Far East. The Far East and Europe being more of the conservative markets, which are used to smoking traditionally smaller ring gauges. But the Middle East is very, very influenced by the United States, ironically. And so there's also a lot of movement of people. If you take Dubai, I think something like 90% of the population is coming from abroad. There's a lot of Americans, there's a lot of influence from the United States. So I think this explains why the UAE and parts of the Middle East are some hybrid between the Anglo-Saxons, let's say the British and the Americans, and then the more traditional Europeans and Asians who go for the smallest sizes. That's my opinion.
Does anything have to do with the time that I feel like Europeans, they treasure their time more than us Americans. We're running a rat race where they spend their time more wisely, I feel like.
I understand. It's an interesting point, but the opposite phenomenon would happen if they treasure their time more. Then they would most probably be inclined to smoking bigger cigars or longer cigars.
Yeah.
And ironically, no, I really believe that it's based on this tradition and stubbornness. We said it earlier on in the show. The Europeans are stubborn. They don't change their ways very often. The Asians don't either. These are very, very old cultures that have done things for hundreds and thousands of years, and you need to wait a long time to see things change. And things are changing. The Europeans are slowly starting to smoke bigger and bigger cigars, and so are the Asians. But it's taken 20 or 30 years, and the Americans have started 20 years earlier.
And I have something, remember I was at, it was IPCPR at that time, and a group of guys approached me, and they asked me, what is a cigar or a size that you would never do and that somebody might do that's not so traditional as you? And I said, it's very easy. Make a cigar 10 by 100. Put a big band on it and call it enough.
That's crazy. I
would put also on, if you have it inside a box, I would put a warning or let people know that batteries are not included.
Batteries. There's also another thing which I think it's worthwhile mentioning, and that's the culture of showing. And I think if the audience will find this interesting. The Europeans, it is not chic and it's not acceptable to show exterior signs of big things. You know, driving around a Bentley or a very fancy car will not be seen in Europe in the same way that it will be seen in the United States. And I think that the Europeans tend, now I know you might think, yeah, but they dress in a certain way and they do this in a certain way, but they'll tend to downplay things. And the American culture may tend to upplay things. You know, the first thing that we'll do in the States, we'll go out and get a huge bottle of champagne. We'll go to the restaurant. We'll buy the biggest cigar, the biggest car, the most expensive. In Europe, it would be very unusual to see this. So I think this kind of culture difference also plays on size.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you, Jeremiah. Also, I thought of a point that is unusual in the United States. If you look at all the old booklets or guidelines on enjoying a cigar, which traditionally a lot of was started in Europe. You see, they say that they recommend the first thing they do, take off the cigar band. That's right. And in Europe, they don't. Many people, it used to be. I don't know today. Hopefully, it's changing. That they remove the cigar band. You don't see what cigar they're smoking for whatever reason and so forth. In the United States, the cigar band is important. If you're in a club or something, it's a conversation. And, I think it's sinful to remove a cigar band until you're near it or so forth. And it's warmed up because for many reasons. First of all, it's like removing the horse off the Ferrari, or, removing the label off Chateau Margaux or Petrus, and putting it in a plain bottle, or, removing the H out of a Hublot product, or the conversation ends there, and I think that that's a big difference between Europe and the United States is, the ban. And also it's very important to leave the ban on the United States because back in the traditional days, bands were very small. And they were usually of, maybe brown and cream, brown and white, or red and gold, two colors. They were very small and not so elaborate like they are today. So those elaborate bands require a little bit more pace to hold them on. The other ones come off easier. So that is why it's very important that, you let the cigar warm up first before you remove the band. That's another reason. But I just think that if you're proud of what you're smoking and everything, I like to see people when they have the band on. And that's one thing that we see on social media that I look at. I mean, people are always showing their band. You saw the other day, even with our friends in the Middle East, how when they were on the show, Light 'Em Up, that was a great show that I was so happy that Jose asked me to join that show with Reinhold. First thing, they show their band and everything. And I think that's, you know, it's a way to reach out and touch. It's a way of communication. And
Carlito,
keep going back, it's about communication, it's about conversations. And cigars are about gathering people together and sharing thoughts and everything. And the band, I think, it's a vehicle that assists that and makes it easier.
So I don't know if you remember, but Rocky Patel had actually told us why the band was created, why there was a band on a cigar. Do you know why?
I know I know what I've always read all my life.
Uh-huh.
And I'm sure Jose it would be better, but it has to do with a female.
Yeah.
It has to do, of course, with a female. Jose, you want to elaborate on it, or should I?
No, you do it. You do it. I think it was. I think it was in England. I think it was a queen, if I'm not mistaken.
The queen. You're absolutely right. The queen loved tobacco, cigars, and everything. And took it back. And for what I've read, they put the cigar band so she wouldn't stain her delicate little gloves and fingers, so she could hold the cigars with their gloves and everything. Yeah, it was a lady. That was the start of supposedly a cigar band. That's what I've always read. I've been told. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's very interesting that it was a queen. And still today,
Queen Victoria, maybe Queen Victoria.
I've
actually thought about holding my band, my cigar on the band because of that reason. Because I'm like, maybe I should hold it on top of the band and not show off the band, but actually like hold it.
I think there's no correct way. I think it's just enjoy yourself and don't even be conscious of where you hold the cigars, or it's not that important. But I'm curious. Maybe somebody in the audience could let us know or look it up quickly, but I'm curious if it was Queen Victoria or it was a Queen of Spain, because
that's what Mickey says it's Queen Victoria.
Well, then they know, but because of the discovery in tobacco and the first factory in Sevilla, the first technical cigar factory was in Spain in Sevilla. I was assuming that, I don't recall that it was the Queen of Spain, but it could have been Queen Victoria, because from what I remember, and I'm not good at that, it depends, I remember that the Queen, certain privileged people smoked cigars and everything. And then one of the big things after many years, that it was only for the elite and the privilege and the royalty, the famous words, "Gentlemen, you may smoke." So, yeah. So, Jose, I know you're a history buff.
No, but what I've heard is always about Queen Victoria. But one thing that I've noticed, we've all been in Europe a lot, is that in Europe, I was amazed in all my travelings and doing events there, there's a more tendency to light up the cigar with cedar than in the States, because in the States, very few people have done this. And I'll tell you something, when I was with La Aurora, I was in Estonia doing an event. It was like 200 euros to go to this event. And when people were lighting up the cigars, before they lit it up, they were shaking the cigar. And I asked why, and they said that was some English guy that went there many, many years ago, and before he would light up the cigar, he would do this. To be honest, unless you or Jeremiah or Benji or George Brightman or somebody would know that, why would you shake a cigar before lighting it up? With cigarettes, people would do this to make more compact.
Yeah,
but to shake a cigar, I never understood why.
Let me tell you something, Professor. I do that because of my Parkinson.
No, but listen, don't bring up George Brightman, because George Brightman will have an answer, not one, several. And George Brightman has done research. It's not coincidental they call him the Pope. But I've heard people say when you first light a cigar, you do this, you swirl it around for the things and everything. I don't know. Cigars were enjoyed for 2 centuries, before even coming to the Dominican Republic, or they're writing the first, brochure on cigars. And people used to go like this, get a mat and light the cigar, take a couple of puffs and enjoy it. But, I think it's part of it's what makes you happy. It's part of a ritual. And somebody comes up with a new technique. I remember different cuts. You do it sideways because the palate and this and that.
And you're like,
you know, that's all good, man. That's all good. It's all fun too.
All right.
But wait. This is a new one. No one tried this. You talk about cedar, Jose. I thought this was a new style. I have been to an event and given someone a cigar with cedar and a ribbon on it. And they take the cellophane off and everything. And all of a sudden I see like a big flame flashes. Somebody lit the cigar with the ribbon and the cedar. You know, cedar burns quickly, you know, once you know, especially if it's thin like that and dry, it's going to catch up. You got to be very, very careful with a cedar splint and everything and especially if you got something polyester on you, you don't want any sparks to hit your clothes or silk or something. But no, a lot of people used cedar. That's all tradition in restaurants and everything. And it's very, very nice. It's part of a ritual longer and so forth. But I think there's nothing to light a cigar, there's nothing wrong with wood, any wood, whether it's a match. First, when you light it with a match, of course, the most important thing, let the sulfur and everything go up and everything on the match. Let it burn till it gets to the actual wood. It's very, very difficult with big ring gauges because it takes a long time and you usually burn your finger before you toast your cigar. So normally you use a butane lighter and a torch. I think there's nothing like that. I mean, you could be in the windy city of Chicago and light your cigar and all that. So, and if today's world, what we see what's happening in my home country, if you have one of those lighters, you're not going to be able to break out of jail with them. There really are torches. So. I know why you're not allowed to fly with them. That's
right. Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen.
Let me just say something. I want to be Carlito now. Let me just say something. No, wait, Jeremiah, wait. Isn't this fun? I'm having so much fun. I'm just enjoying this and watching us laugh and seeing Melanie, get involved and energized and ask questions, and Jose just sit back smiling and laughing. And that's what this show is all about. It's about, bringing people in, having fun and everything, and going through these very, very difficult times we're all going through. It's just to break away, be ourselves, and really show what Cigar is all about. It's about having fun. It's about enjoyment. It's about sharing stories. And I think this makes this program so unique in so many ways. I know there's someone that's not interested in cigars or look at us and think it's a comedy team. But no, but seriously, we talk about so many different things here, from history, from tradition, from families, emotional things and everything. And I just tell you how pleased I am, how this show has progressed and how much fun I'm having. Aww. And I just hope that everyone else also is relaxed and just having fun, enjoying themselves.
I'm definitely having a great time. These are my favorite mornings, Tuesdays and Fridays.
You guys are amazing. And Carlito, thanks to you, and Melanie and the professor, thanks to you, this show has become very special to many people. I think Carlito summed it up perfectly. You're having a good time, Carlito, but so is the rest of us, and I'm sure so is everybody in the audience who's extremely appreciative of your time and Melanie's time and the professor's time in getting together and offering to the world these moments which are going to be engraved in history and which will never be lost. And I'm hoping that, our children, grandchildren, and all the future generations will be able to look back, sign on to YouTube if it still exists in 100 or 200 or 500 years.
It will live on.
It'll probably be in a pill that you drink. And the pill that you swallow, and all of a sudden you see everything flashing in your mind.
That's right.
Oh my God!
But it's
already edited.
This is going to go a long way. A very, very.
This is the visionary. That is definitely the visionary.
Somebody will do it.
You can count on Carlito for the vision. Ladies and gentlemen, it's that time of the day. But before we say goodbye, I would like to thank a very, very, very special person who has contributed to this show immensely. He has been with us since the beginning, and it's time for him to move on. His work has reopened, and he needs to go back to it. but our dear friend Benoit Brochard. Benoit, I know you're on the show. I wanted to thank you on behalf of the entire team for your commitment and your smiles, your love, and the way that you've warmed up this show. It will be very, very difficult. It will be impossible to replace you. You will forever be inscribed in the memory of this show and the tempo which you created. And we will do our best to try to continue that tempo and that philosophy as best we can. But we love you very much, and we appreciate everything you've done for us and for the audience out there. And I think today's your last day on the show, so go for it. It's Benoit's Baked, guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Hi, hello. So just the last joke for this show. Ready?
Yes.
So it's two couples of friends spend their wedding night in the same hotel. So they each take a room with a balcony opposite so that the gentlemen can give each other some news in the morning. So the next day they meet on their balcony to smoke cigarettes. So the weather is fine, the sun is shining, the birds are singing. So one asks the other, so this wedding night, how is your wife? Very well, said the other. My wife is there, lying on the bed. She smokes. And yours? Mine? It's okay. She doesn't smoke. She's just irritated. Thank you so much, guys.
Oh my God.
Oh, that's terrible. Benoit, thank you very, very much.
Thanks to you. I will miss you. Thank you so much. God bless you all. I hope to see you, everybody, on the same table in Brussels. Me casa y su casa. So when you want to come in Brussels, I will be your guide in our beautiful city. So thank you so much. Thank you, Jeremiah, for your kind words. Thank you, everybody, for everything you did during this difficult period, and everything you did to bring some brightness, some light, some sunshine to all the people. So thank you so much. Bye bye. Love you.
Thank you,
You just got a
Benoit.
special message from a special sunshine, Benoit. My sister, Cynthia Fuente, just says that she sends her love and that you're very special and part of the family. And when you're family, you don't have to see each other every day or be together every day. You know, once family, always family. And you're a special human being. I look forward to seeing you. Thank you for your contributions. I know that you have a lot of responsibilities and you took a lot of time out to entertain us and bring things special. And stay safe and stay well, my friend. There's a lot of people wishing you the best. We got the Opus X Rat Pack on. You know, there's Mitchie is on all the time. Everybody, you know, you need to start your own show so that we can have everybody following you.
That's what I do every day in my restaurant.
Yes, no, I know
the
that.
show.
I know you do. I know. And I look forward to be back and seeing you, my brother. All the best to you.
Benoit, let me tell you something before you hang up. I love the mustache. Don't lose it. You look like
I look like Carlito.
No, you look no. You look like the YMCA, and I love it. You keep going.
Wow. I prefer Freddie Mercury.
Yeah, that's it. You got it.
That's it. You look all right. Listen, we love you.
The show must go on.
I'll see you very soon, my friend.
Bye, everybody.
All
Bye-bye.
right.
Bye, Benoit.
All right, guys, listen, it's that time of the day. Rich, we're going to be looking forward to your participation on the show this Friday for Fuente Friday. And we'll have, for sure, a wonderful guest of honor. We just don't know exactly who it's going to be yet. So make sure to tune in this Friday for the Fuente Friday. In the meantime, we send you our love.
Jeremiah.
Yes, sir.
Jeremiah, hold a minute. For those that follow us, Jeremiah is going to be on Sunday on Light 'em Up. So we want all the followers of Jeremiah to tune in 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 8 p.m. here in Europe. I'm also going to be Thursday night with the Lebanese Cigar Club. It's a huge club there. And we don't mention Lebanon a lot, but I got to tell you something. Those people in Lebanon, they love Fuente. They love to smoke. They're waiting for me to. It's going to be 2 hours. So to all my friends in Lebanon and all over the world, tune in on Thursday. I'm going to put up the post tomorrow, and it'll be a great show. As always, spread the love of cigars and the good times and what we're all about. So
I'll be on the show on Sunday. I'll be on the show on Sunday, and I have to be on that show in Lebanon because that's my extended family there in Lebanon. And I promise, Professor, I won't ask you any hard questions.
All right, you heard it from the professor. You've heard it from Carlito. Melanie, we love you. Carlito, we love you. Professor, take care of yourself. And see you guys all on Friday for Fuente and Meerapfel present Meet the Professor. In the meantime, take care of yourselves and of each other. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye now. Take care.
Bye.